All right, Jesse on Fire and Gabrielle here for Play with Matches. So what we're going to do with this time today is since we are on the eve of the Jeffrey Epstein client list getting released.
Is it really tomorrow?
It's almost certainly going to be this week. Like the Attorney General said that the book itself is on her desk and it's the last step.
Crazy.
Like it's happening. And she said per the instructions of Donald Trump. So like it's coming, dude. The question really though is what are we going to find out about that? Like, are we just going to find out whose phone numbers he has?
Yeah, like what's the list?
Like, here's what I want to know. We know that the federal government went and raided that island. What'd they get? Like, what'd you get? Why should that be a secret from all of us? You know what I mean? It's like,
I don't know. I'm curious to see how this goes.
Yeah. All right. So let's watch this because this is Eric Weinstein telling an absolutely insane story about when he met Jeffrey Epstein at the height of his Epsteinness. All right. Check this story out.
This is a physiological reaction.
And I'm sorry. I'm having a physiological reaction to you not being subscribed to our channel and not having liked this video.
Please help him.
It hurts.
Corresponds to this phrase that, you know, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Like that's a real physiological feeling. I don't know whether the hair actually does that, but it's exactly what it feels like. You're meeting somebody who is unholy. And, you know, one of the most interesting things is that he was beckoning into a world that didn't seem to exist but for him as the doorman. I think that's one of the things that freaked out a lot of these rich people is that he felt rich in a movie sense, which is not something that you find among actually rich people.
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of very wealthy people don't own an island. Islands are really tough to maintain. I'm obsessed with islands. And, you know, in general, I have to be obsessed with islands that have airports run by other people because, you know, they have populations on them. But every rich person starts to wonder, can I afford it? Can I afford an island? Or how many jets? And if you look at Jeffrey Epstein's wealth, it was beaten. It was like gold beaten into gold foil so that it could cover a vast area and leave the impression of a solid gold life.
Dude, so what's crazy about this is I was just during my stream that I did right before you came up, I was talking about, because someone asked about Brock Purdy, who's the Niners quarterback, and they're potentially going to re-sign him to this huge contract. And they're saying that he's going to get like $50 to $60 million. This guy was making $1 million a year.
Oh, wow.
And I was saying like, that is such an astronomical financial jump that you're like, you go from making $1 million a year to making $2 million every 2 weeks.
Wow.
$1 million a week. You know what I mean? It's like so insane. But in the Epstein story, it's like this guy was, I mean, like all the money that they could track down of his, I believe it was $600 million total. And they're saying that like the people who actually know, like I personally don't know the difference between 600 million and, you know, 10 billion or what, you know what I mean?
Right. Like, what does that difference in your life look like?
But the people who do know, like Eric Weinstein, he's like, this guy's he was living like a person who's worth 10 billion. It never made any sense, you know? And it's all part of like the background of this
illusion
is but the hypothesis is that he's always been an intelligence agent of some kind.
But it was really probably
entrapping people so that they have leverage to get them to do what they want them to do.
Wow.
Mid 9-figure fortune that had been used to buy islands and planes, which is not what any 9-figure person is going to do.
So you had a felt sense, an embodied sense of discomfort?
Oh, hell yeah.
And where did that come from?
The fact that he had a lipstick camera pointed at me from an art object that he laid a table that was preposterously long and thin with a tablecloth made of an American flag to make it look like a coffin so that I would spill my coffee on the flag of my own country. I mean, the fact that he looked like a mutant Ralph Lauren with this kind of lubricious quality, and he's talking all of the science and market stuff, and nothing adds up, and there's an heiress bouncing on his knee to get her boobs to jiggle to see whether it can distract. I mean, it's like one of these crazy scenes where nothing about it was normal. There was no trace of a normal world.
That sounds like a script from a movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it, John Travolta is like putting a gun to your head and forcing you to drink and break a code in a minute. Yeah, like that part of it. And then there was some sort of like, remember that story, The Most Dangerous Game, where a man invites you to his island so he can hunt you? This was scary, and it was meant to be scary.
Sounds menacing.
Well, I think his product was silence. People think that his product was sex or finance, but it was silence. I'm pretty sure.
What's that mean?
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you what he means. He means blackmail, silence.
Right.
That's his business. Hey, we got you on tape here with this girl who I don't really think anybody's going to believe that you thought she was of age because, I know she's 10. You know she's 10, but she doesn't really look very much older than that. And, you look really, I don't know. That's a pretty clear picture of your face. So how much will you pay and what will you do to make sure no one ever finds out about this?
If you're scary enough, look, rich people can get sex, but they can't necessarily get people to shut up afterwards. So my take on it instantly was, this is not an actual human. This is a construct of someone's. Someone has created a fake human being called Jeffrey Epstein, who's a mysterious currency trading financier with crazy rules so that no one would ever invest with him. And I think that was to keep people from seeking his investment services. I mean, he's labeled disgraced financier, but nobody has a record of trading with him. He was sitting there, he comes into the meeting and he says, well, Eric, I was just doing some currency trading.
I was just doing some currency trading. That's so weird. It's not, like, people think that these rich people are all so smart, like they're so smart. I think like people like Jeffrey Epstein realize they're mostly dumbasses also. Like most people are dumb, so you're just like, I was just doing some currency trading and look at this big house, right? You couldn't get a house like this if you weren't currency trading, could you? It's like weirdos.
What I'm seeing is a meme with Steve Buscemi with a skateboard over his shoulder.
Hello, fellow kids, teenagers. Yeah, hello, fellow financial traders.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, you don't really look like a rich guy who trades in markets.
The thing that I'm finding myself intrigued by here is it takes a moderate amount of cognitive horsepower to be able to piece together this theater that you sat down at.
Yeah.
Deployed in a nefarious, malicious, manipulative way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's smart.
What do you mean it's smart? Say more.
It's
Like, I
not
disagree.
something that could be done by a simple mind.
You think he did it?
Oh, he has a team of manipulators?
No, when I say I think he was a construct, I literally mean that. I think he was constructed, like fitted with a story.
Oh, so you think he was a plant?
No, I think he was a construct.
What's that? Okay, you're going to have to dig into.
I think,
Dude, but look, this is what this is what Eric Weinstein does though, is he's so smart, and his whole life he has developed this thing of like, no, I said a construct. And the guy is like, clearly he's not understanding that you
what a
mean
construct
an
is.
intelligence agency construct meant to entrap people and extract their,
Yeah.
secrets. He's like, no, idiot. I mean, a construct.
I
It's
said
like,
what I said.
yeah, a person who didn't know very much about Jeffrey Epstein, how the fuck would they know what that means? You know what I mean? They'd be like, what?
Jeffrey Epstein, super genius financier, was not a thing that existed. Where did the money come from? You're going to mumble Lex Wexner? Okay, so that's what you mumble. But then, there's this missing fortune of Robert Maxwell and this fortune of Jeffrey Epstein that we can't explain. Are those the same fortune? It's like a conservation of money principle, that if you have a fortune that's missing and you have a fortune that can't be explained and they're connected by Ghislaine Maxwell, I don't know. Why is it that no hedge funds, what is it? They file form, I forget if it's 13F. There's certain forms that you have to file. Nobody's ever asked for these things. Who's his prime broker? Where has somebody gone over the prime brokerage? What are his trades? He would have to move the market if he was, doing a yard of euros or Swiss francs or who knows what, like $1 billion. That would move the market. So there's no way you can fake retroactively a hedge fund of immeasurable size that trades currencies. I don't think he was a currency trader. He told me he was a currency trader.
So when you say a construct, who constructs? Who's the builder?
I don't know. I would imagine some version of the intelligence community. Sometimes somebody's cover gets blown. We have a very famous, unfortunate story of Eli Cohn with the Mossad, where Eli Cohn was an Egyptian Jew.
Oh, by the way, he is very Jewish, obviously. So the implication has always been on Jeffrey Epstein that it was the Mossad that was running him from Israel. That's why that's relevant. It's just like,
Okay.
I mean, I don't really know.
It's all fascinating.
There is a bunch of circumstantial evidence that connects Ghislaine Maxwell's father to
That's
Mossad.
what he was saying
Well, there's
with the money.
he had $600 million when he died. Jeffrey Epstein somehow had very close to $600 million when he died, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, and that
Right.
But there had been so much time that passed. But still, it seems very likely since Ghislaine Maxwell's with
very
him.
coincidental. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was fitted with a backstory that he was an Argentinian playboy who'd made a fortune in Argentina, but was Arabic in origin. And then he moves to Damascus and he takes out an apartment where he holds orgies and becomes the best friend of Hafez al-Assad,
His origin
right?
story?
And so
Another guy.
that's an example of a story we know. We know how the intelligence communities of the world create people who don't really exist.
Yeah.
Construction of, I know that this is just a one-time thing here that you got to see, but the construction of the coffin-looking American flag, the spilling of the coffee, this weird power play thing that's going on, that seems, now that you say that, it wasn't him even pulling his own strings, perhaps. It makes a lot more sense. But even that degree of sophistication, I learned this from Daniel Schmachtenberger. We sat down and he's spent some time with particularly powerful people.
Yeah.
And he told me this really harrowing story of somebody who has both the desire and the means to treat themselves like an apex predator against their own kind. And they said so. They broke the fourth wall about this and said apex predators don't care about the prey, but they saw their own kind as prey. And I asked Daniel, how does it feel to sit opposite somebody who isn't rate limited by the resources, who can not only dream to have this, plus have the motivation or lack of virtue or integrity to go ahead and consider doing it, and then has the capacity, the assets to be able to enact it.
Sure.
And it's reminding me, it's giving me this same something. It feels like it's up on the top of my head. It's giving me some sort of a sense like that.
This was intended to be terrifying. It wasn't an accident. It was intended to be as fascinating as it could possibly be, which it was, and terrifying at the same time. And it achieved both. It achieved both objectives.
What was he doing there?
I mean, I was given an opportunity to meet him again.
He was working for a hedge fund.
Oh.
And that's what Epstein does. He collects people in those kinds of positions.
Didn't know what to do. I mean, the other thing that I just found really weird is that he knew about my research, and it turned out that he was connected to my graduate department at Harvard.
Yeah, so Epstein was super dialed into the science community. Like, probably developing technologies that he can make sure that they have all of the cutting edge. If he's involved in these projects, then as new technologies developed, he knows about it, feeds the information to them.
Right.
It would be my guess.
That makes sense.
So he had a connection to the Harvard math department, unbeknownst to me. I don't know when that began. I know 2 of the professors he was connected through. But this is some unholy story. It has nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. It has to do with whatever this thing was. We tripped over a thing. We tripped over a structure. We named the structure Jeffrey Epstein.
Sorry about that, guys. We wanted to fix the audio lining up for you because it was driving us crazy. Let's continue.
It must be very unfortunate in some regards for whoever it was, if that's true, that was in charge of this construction, that people got T-shirts with his name printed on them.
But this was already going wrong in the early 2000s. You see, my sense of this is that this was a pre-internet plan that lived into the internet age and couldn't survive contact with the internet age.
What did the internet bring in that didn't allow it to survive?
Eyeballs, discussion.
Level of surveillance.
Well, there's a claim that nobody cares about Jeffrey Epstein because it's this many years later and we've all moved on. Yeah, that's completely untrue. And we know that it's true because if you start talking about Jeffrey Epstein, the engagement goes up. So you have these fictions that are put out by mainstream media or traditional news desks, and nobody cares about that story. Well, that you can see from social media that that's not true, from the internet. So the internet is constantly providing an ability to check whether or not these claims from inside the structure are true. And Jeffrey Epstein is an example of what I've called an anti-interesting phenomenon.
What's that?
Well, an anti-interesting thing is something that would normally be fascinating. Imagine, for example, you had a story where you could get a Pulitzer Prize for breaking it. Everybody cares. You sell papers like hotcakes, blah, 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 and nobody wants to report on it. And it's like right there. You could just ask the dumbest questions and it would, New York Times says, disgraced financier. Well, tell me, did you find his prime broker? Did you find the forms? Did you go to his offices in Villard House? No, nobody does, ever. The story is anti-interesting, and it's very different than being uninteresting.
Which would suggest more collusion, more coordination.
Hello? I mean,
See,
this is one of the most uncomfortable things. I think there was a time when people said collusion or coordination, the presumption was, well, that's pretty far out there. We now know, like post Elon Musk's $44 billion adventure at Twitter, that there are these coordinating groups, coordinating social media with the intelligence community or with the Department of Homeland Security or with the State Department. Yeah. We now know that we're living in an orchestrated, curated, choreographed world. And we can't know it officially, but we all know it if we want to know it, which is hysterical. Now we have to talk about, well, are you a conspiracy theorist? Like, I read the Slack messages. I read the emails. What are you even talking about now?
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you.
Yeah. It's like, I feel as though maybe what we could do is just like have a common sense conversation about this insane thing that we're looking at now, Yeah. Like Jeffrey Epstein's the original prosecutor caught him in one of the most insane child trafficking rings ever. And then he gave him 1 year
Yeah.
served where he could come and go as he pleased from the
Had
jail.
to be home at like 8 p.m. or something.
And he was 100% under the control of the Clintons, the one that got him the sentence. And you're like, I wonder why. And it's like, well, there is this other piece of evidence. Jeffrey Epstein had a full wall painting of Bill Clinton in the Monica dress with the jizz stain. You're all, I mean, I'm not a genius, but that sounds like someone saying I've got him by the balls, you know?
It's going to be interesting to see what they actually release.
Yeah, I can't wait, dude. But anyway, that's what we got for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Chat soon.